This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
Today, I'm so lucky to be joined by Karen O'Neill from the Brainwave Trust. She is the knowledge manager there, which is a fantastic title to describe who she is and what she does and just how knowledgeable she actually is. We are going to be talking all about stress on our children and how that impacts them in good ways and sometimes not so good ways. Join us. Thanks for joining us for Being Real Parents with me, Anna, and my colleague and buddy,
Kate. We work in the parenting space.
And it's here where we'll talk about our worlds as parents, the good, the not so good, and the hilarious, and mix this with what we know about behaviour and psychology. Karen, so lovely to have you online with me and also see you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I always enjoy talking to you. We worked across Tākai together and, of course, with some of your team, Deb Rewere and Jason Tiatia as well. And, yeah, what a lovely group of people you all are. Yeah,
that's one of the things I've loved about Brainwave is it seems to attract some pretty awesome people.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. So you are the knowledge manager. Do you want to take me through what that is?
Sure. I guess in a nutshell, I look at the research from lots of different universities, both locally and internationally, around how our tamariki and taihui develop. What sort of things help, what can get in the way of them developing in sort of positive, healthy directions, and then trying to make that information more accessible to people that, aren't so inclined or don't have access to all that research so that everyone that's influencing the life of tamariki can actually understand what's important, what they need to thrive.
Yeah, I've always really appreciated your mahi in this space. I was thinking, I've been working, inside of child development for a long time now, and I remember, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, this constant argument about attachment theory, as it was then known, and people saying, oh, well, it's just a theory, and now Brainwave Trust was at the forefront of making that science, attachment science, in terms of our relationship with kids, and really supported what felt intuitive, in line with our parenting, and in support of our professional work. Giving that backing and giving that a real voice. So I so appreciate what you've done. You have been the real cheerleaders and champions behind that work, hey, when neuroscience first came available and making that really accessible for everyone. Yeah.
Yes, and I guess initially that was kind of a focus, was sharing the neuroscience, but I guess what I see us doing now is sharing quite broadly from all the, many of the relevant, there are a lot of disciplines that inform how tamariki develop and what helps or what gets in the way.
Yeah.
And neuroscience is one of those, and people did get, really excited about that in the 90s when it was sort of first out.
Yeah.
But there are lots of disciplines that actually inform what we know and understand about tamariki and what helps them to develop well. And I think one of our strengths is drawing on those. I mean, additionally, not for me, but as an organisation, we now are drawing on Indigenous knowledge as well as the Western science, which is a huge and exciting step.
Yeah, it is, because they marry, and that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. That's what works, what we know works, is proven and substantiated by you guys. Yeah. So good. And then I'm just also aware that people may be going, I want to check in on these guys and what they're up to. You've got a beautiful website which parents can have a look at for articles, and then you're also doing workshops, presentations regularly.
That's right. We have a lot of, our website's probably the first port of call, www.brainwave.org.nz. And people can also sign up for our database. And we're not like Briscoes. We won't email you 6 times a day. You'll hear from us kind of quarterly with the latest articles and things that we're producing.
Yeah.
And also on our website, I guess, is the best place if you're interested in having a workshop for an organisation, that you're connected with, or a group of parents or professionals as well. You can find out about that on the website.
Yeah, and you draw upon a host of speakers, don't you, who are regionally based and work on your behalf. Yeah.
That's right. We have kaiako across the country that all come with different strengths and backgrounds and connections into their communities that we draw on to as one of the ways for sharing our knowledge. Others were things like, the partnership with Tākai and working through other organisations to help share that information, and being on your podcast.
Oh, such a gift, such a gift. I also love on your website, because I was having a wee trawl, as you do, as I do actually regularly. I take your information everywhere, into prisons and, into my, when I'm speaking, or everywhere I go. But I love that you on there have got this, that one of your missions is to support people to work out how to improve their care of children based on the information that you provide and understand. And I'm guessing that's parents, caregivers, professionals, and perhaps even places like Oranga Tamariki. Am I right?
Yes, but I guess that we're primarily around helping people understand what it is that children need, depending on what their role in relation to the child is.
Yeah.
How people then implement that obviously depends on their professional setting, or for whānau, their own culture, values, issues.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can provide some sound information, because as you'll know, there's kind of lots of noise around parenting and lots of people wanting you to part with your hard-earned cash to buy this, that or the other thing. And
bouncing around on Insta. Yeah. I have.
Yeah. Hopefully one of the things we can do is give solid information around, well, these things are actually important, and maybe these other things aren't so important, so maybe don't worry about them so much.
Beautiful. How did you come to this work?
I have a background in psychology, and I was actually home with my, at that point, 2 young children, and looking for some way to keep some skills alive and to contribute, and came across Brainwave, and it just felt like the perfect fit. So at that point I was what we called an educator, so I ran workshops and things. Oh. And then a few years later, when my youngest was at school, there was a 3-month contract to do some work on the research behind the workshops. My youngest is now just finishing her second year at university, and I'm still here, so that was a really long 3 months. And the role has kind of grown and had all sorts of exciting opportunities through doing that.
Love that. Let's talk stress.
You're listening to Being Real Parents with Kate and Anna on Plains FM 96.9.
So you're about to release a new article on childhood stress. 3 parts of, three main stress types. Clearly I know them off by heart. But, tell us about how you came to that.
Well, the article that's just coming out is actually an update of one of my very early articles that I wrote about 2010, so that's a little bit aging. And it draws in particular on the work the Harvard Centre for the Developing Child did. They came up with a way to conceptualise 3 different levels of stress, because often we can talk about it as if it's all the same thing and it's all bad or it's all whatever. And they came up with the distinction between positive, tolerable and toxic levels of stress, which can have different impacts on tamariki. So
I'm really interested in positive stress, because that feels like that's how I want my life to run. Because I know I feel stress, but I need to know that, part of it is good for me too, please. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously our stress response is there to help us survive. The human race wouldn't have kind of got here if we didn't have an ability to cope with feeling some sense of, threat or challenge and being able to cope with that. Positive stress happens for our tamariki when it's like a moderate level of stress.
Yeah.
And it's usually relatively short-lived, and the child has adult support to cope with what's happening. And it's usually the things that we might expect that tend to be typical for that age and stage. It might be parents setting a limit. You can't have ice cream for dinner, or disappointment about weather cancelling your plans, or all those sorts of things. And I think an important thing for parents to understand is that those kind of smaller stresses with support are actually beneficial. They help children's development, because that's how they build up the ability to ultimately be able to cope with maybe the bigger things that life throws at them.
Which is nice, isn't it, in terms of we need to think about whether or not we're cushioning our kids too much, and it's okay for us to, get them to do stuff and be responsible for stuff and rush sometimes. Please say it's okay to rush them sometimes. Yeah, good.
I'm not aware of specific research on that, Anna, but it's certainly all right for parents to not be perfect, if that helps.
Yeah, I love that. We'll just stop there.
The end.
Then we move to tolerable stress. What's that?
So sometimes things can happen, that we can't control. Child might need medical treatment. There might be a bereavement in the family.
Yeah.
Might be a natural disaster or things that could potentially harm a child's development. But the important thing about tolerable stress is the role of supportive adults.
Yeah.
Having at least one adult who's able to understand the situation from the child's perspective and give them emotional support through that time.
Yeah.
Again, not perfectly.
Yeah.
Because when big things are happening in our children's lives, say a bereavement or a natural disaster, those times are really stressful for parents too. They're really hard. So we aren't going to get it right all the time, and that's okay. But if, by and large, we're trying to understand what's going on for our tamariki and recognising that it's difficult for them, then that's likely to be cushioning them from any harmful effects of those bigger stresses.
It's so interesting that one of the greatest buffers against the impacts of stress is having someone that tamariki can receive comfort from. Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. And it's fascinating when you look at all the research, just how consistent that message is, because as you'll probably know, like, research seldom agrees with itself, 100%. But on that point, I'd say is pretty jolly high level of agreement that having at least one adult there to provide support can have a hugely important protective effect for tamariki. It's important even when times are good, but it's very important when tamariki are faced with sort of more challenging, stressful situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by that it, everything seems to come back to relationship. Yeah. Cool. That's really interesting. So then there's toxic stress, which I remember being a really big buzzword or words at some point, probably around 2010, as you say, because it felt huge, this toxic stress. And I'm guessing that would look something along the lines of tamariki growing up in where there's abuse in some way, violence.
Those are certainly some of the situations that could lead to a toxic stress response.
Yeah.
And the toxic stress, and same for tolerable, really, is about the child's, their own response to stress more than the event per se. Yep. But some types of events are, intuitive, we know, are much more likely to create a huge stress response in tamariki. The thing that differentiates toxic stress from tolerable is that in a toxic, stressful situation, tamariki don't have that adult support.
Oh.
They may have adults in their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, they will do in some shape or form.
Yeah.
But if those adults aren't able, for whatever reasons, to provide the emotional support, the comfort, and help buffer that stress response, that's when those types of stress can then come to impact the tamariki's development and health and well-being throughout their life, in fact, potentially.
Yeah. Okay, so toxic stress is when the world is unsafe for whatever reason and not having that go-to person that can support them through it.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so sad now. Yeah. Okay. The other thing that I was interested in when reading your article was the timing, and that having an impact as well as to when the stress is occurring. Can you talk to me more about that?
Sure. That's been one of the things that's come out of the research in more recent years.
Got it.
And is one of the reasons why we could have a couple of tamariki exposed to a very similar event. I mean, they might be involved in the same event and have such very different responses. One of the reasons for that could be the timing of when that event's happened, so where they are at in their development, so which aspects of their brain and body and their social, emotional learning and so on are happening at that time will be one of the things that influences how that stress impacts them. And when we've got very young, our babies and very young children, and again our taihui, are in a phase of huge development. And so that brings great opportunities to, and the ability to benefit from all the positive things that happen. But it also means that there's more vulnerability to the toxic, stressful situations can have a bigger impact. And I think especially with our pepe, we often underestimate that. We can often hear people say, oh, well, at least they're little and they won't remember, that hurtful medical procedure or that thing that went down in the family home or whatever. But actually, because of their stage of development, they may be more likely to be affected because their body still remembers that, depending, of course, on the support and nurturing that they received during those times.
Yeah, got it. So alongside timing, is there anything else that we need to be aware of for our tamariki?
That's a great question. There are a number of things that make a difference for how stress can impact tamariki. So timing, when in development that happens, is one of them. Gender can make a difference as well, how those impacts play out. and genes. I mean, we're all born with our own unique genetic potential, and some of that may make us more or less susceptible to stresses and things that happen to us. So all of those things together can influence how stress is experienced and how it may continue or not to impact tamariki. And I think what's important about that is recognising that all our children are different, and therefore what the support they might need and benefit from is going to look different. And why some children, I don't know, say there's a school lockdown or something happens, the children have all had the same experience on the face of it, but their individual experiences of that may be very different. And actually one of the other things that influences it are their prior experiences of stress.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So all of those things in complicated ways influence each other and influence the child, and help determine how that might play out for that particular child.
The other thing is too is that our genetics, DNA, and also gender are fixed. So and timing. We couldn't. The earthquakes happen to us all at the same time, for example. So and there's no predicting that kind of thing. And so that's the stuff that we can't control. Hey. But what we can control is what you're saying through the support that we offer and who we can be for our kids in that too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then also recognising that some kids might appear to be fine.
Yeah.
And maybe are fine.
Yeah.
Or they might appear to be fine and not be fine.
Yeah.
And others may appear to be distressed and experiencing ill effects of what they've gone through. All of their needs are going to be different. And what works for one or what one needs. Someone might have stopped talking about a particular event, after 3 months has passed, and yet their sibling is still struggling with it 2 years later. There's no right or wrong in that. They're individuals with individual needs, and I think it's important for us to understand that sometimes we can forget that our children are all different from each other, and that the same kind of experience can have quite a different impact on them, and therefore what we need to do about that might be quite different.
Yeah. I'm really loving this. I'm loving how we need to be responding to our kids in this, because that's going to make the ultimate difference as to how they cope and manage. And I do love reflective parenting, and so this is feeling so good. I'd love a roundup, 3 top tips is what we usually do, 3 outcomes or 3, wholesome ideas. Tell me what you'd say here.
One, to start with, I guess, is to realise that because toxic stress can have lasting impacts, where possible with the things in our control, we ought to be trying to protect our tamariki from them where we can. Because that's going to set them up for better health and development and learning across the rest of their lives. We can't always do that. Life happens. But really understanding the hugely important role that adults play, especially the special adults in the lives of our tamariki, whether that's parents or other whānau members, or sometimes people beyond the whānau, have a role to play. That support for tamariki, particularly in those stressful times, can make an amazing difference, and not just for the tamariki in that time, but can make a huge difference to their resilience and how the rest of their development and so on can go on from there.
Teachers, I would add into that. Yeah,
definitely, because teachers have that ongoing relationship and connection with the child for a period of time, in a way that probably not too many other professional roles I can think of would do.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that for myself in terms of, losing my mum from cancer in that time with my, they played a great role in my children's world when kind of I felt less available for them to emotionally, and then also during the quakes. Teachers, incredible people, Yeah,
that touches on a really good point, which I think I mentioned earlier, when tough things happen, it's hard on the adults. And so our support systems and, our ability to try and look after ourselves, but our ability to draw on support from those around us, both for ourselves and for our children, is hugely important, and is going to help everyone come through those sad, difficult, challenging times better than they otherwise might have. But the other thing too is probably just to remember that those short-term stresses are a positive part of development. They help with learning. So while we want to protect tamariki where we can from the toxic stress, the being exposed to family violence, to growing up in poverty, all of those sorts of things, it doesn't mean that we should be trying to sort of wrap them in cotton wool from the ordinary disappointments and ups and downs of everyday life. It's actually really important that we can support them through those times rather than protect them from them. If they don't get player of the day in their sports team, if they don't get the certificate at prize giving, if they're watching their sibling get all the presents at their own, their birthday, those are all learning opportunities when an adult can help them recognise how they're feeling and support them through it, but don't rescue them from experiencing that.
I like Lucy Hone says that beautiful thing around resilient people understand that shit happens.
Yes. I don't know if I can say shit. I said
sorry,
happens.
I did.
What I meant was when shit happens. That's what we're talking about. If I can sneak in the fourth one too, it is also to remember, when we're talking so much about the important role of parents and other adults, is to recognise that we are human and we don't get it right all the time. We don't need to get it right all the time. Our tamariki don't need us to get it right all the time. They need us to be trying to understand how things are for them, trying to meet their needs, but also recognising that sometimes we do that well, sometimes we do an average job, sometimes it's not even an average job, but we pick ourselves up and then we get back into the fray and then we carry on with supporting our tamariki. And I think that's really important, that parents don't go away thinking, I didn't get it right that time and therefore, I've harmed my tamariki. If we're in there noticing what's going on for them and we're doing our best to meet their emotional needs, we're letting them experience life's normal kind of ups and downs with support, and trying to protect them from the big stuff where we can, then,
beautiful.
We've got very lucky tamariki.
Absolutely. Permission to be imperfect from the Brainwave Trust. Thank you so much, Karen. So beautiful to see you and have you on. What a pleasure.
Thanks, Anna. Great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today.
We hope you've learned that while parenting is challenging sometimes, that's totally normal. It's been fun having you with us. Keep being amazing.